The wedding of the year, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez tying the knot in Venice, but not everyone is welcoming the happy couple.
Something about Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's relationship has never added up. On paper, they should be one of the world's most inseparable power couples. They're married, constantly making headlines, and have more money and influence than most people can imagine. Yet for years, observers have noticed moments that sparked uncomfortable questions and fueled endless speculation behind the scenes. What is it that people keep noticing? And why has one of the most talked about relationships on the planet become surrounded by so many rumors, theories, and unanswered questions? Join us as we uncover what is really going on between Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. What McKenzie experienced inside the marriage. Mackenzie Scott got married to Jeff Bezos in 1993 when he was still building Amazon out of his garage in Seattle. She wasn't marrying the billionaire, she was marrying the love of her life, who was also an ambitious guy with a great idea. They built Amazon together from the ground up. Mackenzie helped with the business in the early days. She was there from the beginning. She understood what Jeff Bezos thought and his ambitions. She understood what he wanted. For 25 years, they were married. They had 4 children together. Mackenzie managed the household, raised the kids, and supported Jeff Bezos as he built one of the most valuable companies in history. She was invisible to the public, but she was essential to his life. She was the stabilizing force behind his success, the person he could trust. But over the years, something fundamentally has changed in him. As Amazon got bigger, and as he got richer, he became different. Mackenzie later revealed in interviews that Bezos had become obsessed with his image. He cared deeply about how he was perceived by the public. He hired teams of people to manage his reputation and controlled every narrative about himself. He wanted to be seen a certain way. By 2018, according to reports about their marriage, Mackenzie had begun to see serious cracks in their relationship. Jeff Bezos was spending more time away from home. He was increasingly focused on his business interests and his personal projects. He was emotionally distant. And Mackenzie started noticing something else. Jeff was becoming very interested in image management. He became extremely careful about being photographed and who he was seen with. He was building a public persona that was separate from his private reality. Mackenzie also noticed that Jeff was developing a very specific type of interest in certain people. He was drawn to people who could enhance his image, people who looked a certain way. He was also drawn to people who had media connections and could help him craft the narrative about who he was. He was thinking about his brand and making decisions based on those concerns. That's the context in which Lauren Sanchez entered the picture. And what happened next showed Mackenzie exactly what she'd been fearing: the affair and the public humiliation. In January 2019, the National Enquirer published photos and leaked text messages proving that Jeff Bezos was having an affair with Lauren Sanchez. The messages were intimate and they were personal. Suddenly, the world knew about it. The affair became front-page news, and the scandal it resulted in became the center of global attention. Lauren Sanchez was 49 years old at the time. She was a former TV news anchor and helicopter pilot who had built a career in media and entertainment. She had worked as an anchor for KSAZ-TV in Phoenix and other television stations. She was married to Patrick Whitesell, too, a Hollywood talent agent who represented major celebrities. She had 2 children with Patrick, and for the longest time, she appeared to have a stable life. To anyone looking, Lauren appeared to have a successful career, and most importantly, she appeared to be secure. But the leaked messages revealed something different. Jeff Bezos and Lauren had been communicating in ways that were clearly romantic and sexual. The messages were explicit. and they'd been going on for months, possibly longer, while both were still married to other people. The affair wasn't a recent mistake that was dug out to humiliate anyone. It appeared to be an ongoing relationship. The scandal exploded immediately. McKenzie Scott filed for divorce within weeks. The media covered it obsessively. Every news outlet in the world was talking about how Jeff Bezos went from being a relatively private billionaire to being the center of one of the biggest celebrity scandals in years. The world was talking about his infidelity and about Lauren Sanchez. But here's what McKenzie Scott discovered during the divorce proceedings that really mattered. Lauren Sanchez had connections to the tabloid media. She had worked in television for a long period of time and had media relationships. She had spent her entire career in an industry where relationships with journalists and media outlets are essential. And there were questions about how the National Enquirer had gotten those private messages in the first place. How did they get Jeff Bezos' texts? McKenzie started asking these questions, and what she found out made her realize something troubling about Lauren Sanchez. The answers revealed a pattern that McKenzie knew would haunt Jeff Bezos forever. So, what was the discovery that changed everything? What McKenzie discovered about Lauren. During the divorce proceedings, which were finalized in April 2019, McKenzie Scott's legal team conducted extensive investigations into the circumstances of the affair. They looked into how the National Enquirer obtained those messages, and into Lauren Sanchez's background, and also looked into her connections to the media world. They were trying to understand how the scandal had become public. What they discovered was complicated and concerning. While Lauren Sanchez had spent her entire career in media and had connections and sources, the question that kept coming up was, how much did she have to do with the leak? There's no evidence that Lauren deliberately leaked the messages to the National Enquirer. But what investigators found was that she had discussed her relationship with Bezos with people in her circle. She had people she trusted who were connected to the media. She had people who understood how to get information to tabloid outlets. And somehow, those private messages ended up in the hands of the National Enquirer. The timing was suspicious. Something obviously wasn't adding up. More troubling than the leak itself was what McKenzie discovered about Lauren's behavior during the affair. According to accounts that came out during the divorce proceedings, Lauren had been very public about her connection to Jeff. She had told people about it and had implied they had a serious relationship. She had acted like she was going to become the next Mrs. Bezos. She had discussed intimate details with people in her social circle. This revealed something important about Lauren to McKenzie. She wasn't discreet. She was someone who wanted to be connected to Bezos because of who he was, because of his power, money, and status. McKenzie realized that Lauren Sanchez saw Jeff Bezos as a ticket to a certain kind of lifestyle and fame, and she was willing to discuss intimate details of their relationship with people in her network. That's not the behavior of someone who respects privacy or someone who cares about discretion. That's the behavior of someone who wants to be associated with power. And that realization explained everything about why Jeff Bezos would eventually want to distance himself from her. When did he finally realize that he knew absolutely nothing about the woman he left his long-term partner for? The financial weapon McKenzie possessed. When McKenzie Scott and Jeff Bezos finalized their divorce, McKenzie received approximately 25% of Jeff Bezos' Amazon stock. That amounted to about $35 billion. She became one of the richest women in the world and one of the most powerful people Bezos would ever encounter. Why was this so significant? Because McKenzie had leverage. She had knowledge of Bezos' private behavior. She had information about his affairs, his communication style, his vulnerabilities. She had been married to him for 25 years. She knew how he thought. She knew his patterns. She knew his weaknesses, and she had the financial resources to use that information however she wanted. More importantly, McKenzie had something that Jeff Bezos couldn't control: credibility. She was the wronged spouse. She was the mother of his children. She was sympathetic to the public. She was respected. And she had no reason to protect Jeff Bezos' image anymore. If she wanted to talk about what she knew, if she wanted to write a book, give an interview, reveal details about Jeff Bezos' behavior, people would listen to her and believe her. Bezos understood this too. He understood that McKenzie Scott was now a threat to his carefully managed public image that he has spent so much trying to protect. She knew too much and had no financial incentive to stay quiet. She didn't need his money or his goodwill. She could say anything she wanted, and people would listen. According to accounts from people close to both of them, Jeff Bezos became increasingly concerned about what McKenzie might say. What stories might she tell? What details might she reveal? What damage could she do to his reputation if she decided to go public? She could write a memoir. She could give interviews. She could speak about his infidelity, his behavior, his character. But McKenzie Scott made a choice. She didn't use her knowledge as a weapon. Instead, she used her money as a force for good. She committed to giving away her Amazon wealth to charitable causes. She became private and disappeared from public life. But that quiet power, that financial power, remained. And it changed how Jeff related to Lauren Sanchez, because he realized something crucial about his situation. Why Jeff Bezos needed to distance himself from Lauren. After the divorce, Bezos continued dating Lauren Sanchez. They became engaged and even appeared together at some public events. But over time, his behavior changed dramatically. He started appearing at major events without Lauren and was photographed alone most of the time. He started building a public image that didn't include her, as though he was hiding the relationship. Why? Because Jeff Bezos had realized something dangerous. Lauren Sanchez was a liability. Here's the calculation that he made. McKenzie Scott had credibility. She had been wronged, and if he continued to be publicly associated with the woman he'd had an affair with, the woman who had been involved in the scandal that destroyed his marriage, then McKenzie might decide to use her platform and her credibility to tell her side of the story. She might decide that public silence was no longer appropriate. She might decide to speak. In 2019, McKenzie began making major philanthropic commitments. She became a voice for social justice. She became respected and became powerful in a different way than Jeff Bezos. She became the moral authority in the relationship. And Jeff understood that if he gave McKenzie any reason to speak publicly about his infidelity, his affairs, his behavior during their marriage, it could damage his carefully crafted image. By keeping Lauren Sanchez in the background, by not appearing with her at public events, by essentially hiding their relationship from public view, Jeff was sending a message to McKenzie. It was a strategic move. By distancing himself from Lauren, Jeff was trying to minimize the significance of the affair. He was trying to make it seem like a mistake, a moment of weakness, not the beginning of a genuine romantic relationship. He was trying to make it seem like Lauren Sanchez didn't matter that much to him. He was trying to reduce her importance in his life. The data bears this out. Since 2020, Jeff Bezos has been photographed at major events alone, far more often than with Lauren Sanchez. He's been at charity galas without her. He's been at space launches without her. He's been at business events without her. He's attended award ceremonies without her. When they do appear together, it's usually at private events or smaller gatherings away from the public eye. Meanwhile, McKenzie Scott has remained quiet about Jeff Bezos publicly. She's focused on her philanthropy and has been a model of discretion. She's never attacked him and never gone on the record criticizing him. She simply lived her life, and Jeff Bezos has been rewarded for that by not facing public attacks from her. But there's another reason Jeff Bezos wanted to distance himself from Lauren, and it goes back to what McKenzie discovered: the reputation risk that won't go away. By the early 2020, Jeff Bezos' reputation had taken a serious hit. Public opinion of him had declined significantly. People were critical of Amazon's labor practices and how he had become so wealthy while paying his workers relatively low wages. People were angry about his tax avoidance strategies and were skeptical of his intentions with Blue Origin, his space company. He had become a polarizing figure. In this environment, every detail of Jeff Bezos' personal life became ammunition for critics. His divorce became a symbol of his moral character. His affair with Lauren Sanchez became a symbol of his willingness to discard people when they no longer served his purposes. His relationship with Lauren also became a symbol of his superficiality and his obsession with appearances. But more than that, the fact that Lauren Sanchez had media connections, that she had discussed the affair with people in her circle, that the private messages had somehow ended up with the National Enquirer, all of that created a liability. If Jeff continued to be associated with Lauren publicly, if he continued to celebrate their relationship, if he continued to make her a visible part of his life, then she remained a potential vulnerability. What if she decided to write a book about her relationship with him? What if she decided to go on a podcast and tell her side of the story? What if she decided to reveal details about him that he'd prefer to keep private? What if she decided that discretion was no longer necessary? By keeping her in the shadows, by not appearing with her, by not making their relationship a public thing, Jeff Bezos was minimizing that risk. McKenzie Scott understood this dynamic, and according to people familiar with both of them, McKenzie made it clear through her actions that she was taking the high road. She wasn't going to exploit Bezos' vulnerability. She wasn't going to use the affair against him. She wasn't going to weaponize what she knew. She was just going to live her life quietly and do good with her money. And in response, Bezos has been careful to minimize his public association with the woman who had triggered all of this in the first place. He's been protecting himself. He's been managing his image. He's been trying to make it seem like Lauren doesn't matter. This is the real reason Bezos avoids being seen with Lauren Sanchez. It's not because he doesn't care about her. It's because she represents a vulnerability in his carefully managed image. She represents the moment when his control over his narrative broke down. She represents the scandal. She represents infidelity. And by keeping her out of the public eye, Bezos is trying to prevent that narrative from becoming relevant again. McKenzie Scott knew all of this. She understood what Bezos had realized, that Lauren Sanchez was a liability, not an asset. And by choosing not to weaponize that knowledge, by choosing instead to focus on her own life and her charitable work, McKenzie Scott has essentially forced Bezos into a situation where he has to hide his engagement from the public. In June 2025, Jeff Bezos and Lauren transformed Venice into a playground for the rich and famous. Nearly 200 guests arrived by water taxi as paparazzi crowded the canals. Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, Orlando Bloom, Leonardo DiCaprio, Bill Gates, Tom Brady, and countless other celebrities gathered to witness the moment. Lauren walked down the aisle in a custom Dolce & Gabbana gown that required 900 hours of work, later saying she felt like a princess. The celebration reportedly cost tens of millions of dollars and ended with a lavish party worthy of a Hollywood finale. From the outside, it looked like the perfect ending to a modern billionaire love story. But that is exactly where it began to look off. What makes the situation fascinating is that some observers have noticed something unusual about Jeff Bezos in recent years. Despite the public displays, there have been moments when he seems oddly uncomfortable with the intense spotlight surrounding the relationship. Moments that have fueled speculation about whether the public version of the romance matches the private reality. Because sometimes, the most revealing thing about a relationship isn't the person someone chooses next. It's the person who knew them before the world did. Do you think McKenzie Scott deliberately used her knowledge as leverage against Bezos? Or did Bezos just assume she might? What would you do if you were in her position? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.